This is so fun. iPhone
I
3.
am
I don't know
too.
who you are, if you can hear me, and if it's possible for you to change your name so that we all know who you are, that would be amazing. Who is that? Hold on, let me change my view here. Oh, well, your view, I'm viewing your screen. Oh, I love that you're going to start here. And you can go for it and unmute as well. I just want to know, I don't want to have to refer to you as iPhone 3. I want to know who we're talking to. Um, and yeah, Marianne, let me know if you need anything else
Okay.
in
No,
terms
I
of
think I'm
setting
good.
up.
And we'll see what happens,
Yeah.
with the phone. Maybe I'll just shut down the laptop. I don't know. The question is really to turn it around and be able to see what's on my desktop, my
Okay.
actual desktop,
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
you can see the pile. But we can, we can get started.
Okay. And hey, if it looks like it's upside down to us, I'm sure
Does it?
that's fine. No, it
Oh,
wasn't when you were, I think that was what you were worried about, but
yeah, I wanted to flip the camera so that you could see, instead of my face looking into the camera, it would flip down onto the desk so you could see my pile. I have a whole pile of mending things over here that I
yeah.
want to show you so we can do that. But we'll get there when we get there. I'll
Okay.
just start with my little story here, everybody.
Okay.
Welcome. Thank you for being
Yeah.
here. I'm
Thank you for
super.
doing this, Marianne. And
Oh,
I just really quickly, I think all of us know you, but I just have to say on a personal note, I cherish you, period. I just
oh,
cherish knowing you. I think that you are one of the most, just the kindest, most thoughtful, considerate,
hmm,
loving, smart as hell people that I know. And it
oh,
seems like everything that Marianne does for all of you, it's very intentional. And so when I learned that Marianne, what she does with her business with Fresh Circle, it's, and am I pronouncing it the right
yeah,
way?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's yeah. If you're French and you want to say Cercle, you're more than welcome. But
Okay, that sounds so much
I
better
say
when you
Circle.
say it. That's
Yeah, yeah.
beautiful.
No.
Um, I never took French, so I would just completely
I
botch
never say French circle. I say fresh or
it.
fresh circle. I say fresh circle because it's
Okay.
all about the circle.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where it's like, well, of course that's what she does. Because it's true to all those things that I just said about you and your personality and what you're about. And so I just wanted to preface it with that and just say that I feel like we are in for a treat today because of who you are, and all that you do is so driven by just doing good for others, which in turn makes us feel so good. So I'm just really excited for this today, and just to say
Thanks.
thanks for doing this.
Oh, that's super sweet. Thank you. Thank you for
Of
sharing your
course.
platform. I've already learned so much from you just by being in your group and community, and also from Shannon and Lara and their share out and everything that they've been doing.
Yeah,
So I'm super
you're so
excited to
sweet.
do this with everybody today. Hi and welcome.
Yeah.
So I do have a slide deck. I know but it's all pictures. It's to keep me on track, because I would just go down every side channel, side story, telling the story and get like completely distracted. So hopefully I can stay on task. But please be introduced to my parents, Carol Ann and Frank Scipione. Um, when when I was 5 years old, they bought their first house, and it was in this little tiny town in Pennsylvania, about 20-minute drive around the mountain from where my dad was raised in Portage, Pennsylvania. But this was in Evansburg. And the really important thing about the fact that they bought their house when I was 5 was that I had a room to myself. So this picture of them is a couple years later, but at age 23, when they bought the house, my mom already had 4 children and she was going to have 3 more. So she wasn't done yet, but I'm just saying, she was a young mom. She was in the thick of it. And we had this house, and I had my room, and it had a built-in bed, a single bed with the drawers underneath, and it had little closets on either end of the bed. The one at the foot of the bed was my closet, and it just had a couple of dresses hanging up in there and a couple pair of shoes, maybe. The one at the head of the bed was my mom's closet, and it had a janky sliding door. I couldn't get into it, but I knew that's where she kept all of her.
Mm.
She kept her fabric stash. She kept her sewing machine and all her notions and stuff like that, and her, former like bridesmaids dresses and stuff. So one time though, I was able to get it open just enough to get in there. And when I did, I saw all of her fabric stash stacked up on the long shelves, sort of the width of my bed. And I couldn't reach the very top, but I stood on my tippy toes and stretched my arms all the way up as high as I could reach. And I just ran my hands slowly down the pile of fabric. And then she had it arranged so that it was like the lightest weight fabrics at the top. So it was voile and dotted Swiss, and then like Italian eyelet and linen and silk taffeta, pot de soie. Then it would get into the brocades and all the tweeds and the woolens at the bottom. And I would just take my time feeling all those textures. And I just loved that. I also loved her process, watching her make things. She made dresses for me, and I loved everything she ever made for me my whole life. Everything she sewed, I was like super proud to wear. I thought I was like the hit, wearing it. Anyway, the takeaway here, what I came to understand much, much later, was that this was not a closet for my mom to store her fabric. This was a sanctuary. This is where she came to escape, dare I say it, motherhood, as I know we have all experienced at one time or another, right? So she knew who she was, she knew what she wanted to do, and this was her sanctuary. Now, this is a picture of my grandmother, my dad's mother. She immigrated from Italy in 1921. And this is an amazing photograph. I never knew I had this photograph that our family, I got it from my brother recently. He sent me a bunch of photos recently. I never saw this until I opened the bag that he had it in. And here she is in the midst. She's actually sifting the flour. She was a phenomenal baker, phenomenal cook. She did all the homemade pastas. She made breads and rolls and pies and cakes and all these amazing foods. And the back of the photograph says, "Oh boy, Christmas cookies." And I just love that she's, in the process of making the cookies that we all loved. We loved everything she made. The breads, me especially, all the bread, all the pasta, that was like the best. And what's important about this is that here I am, guys. This is like
Yes.
this is 8-year-old me. And when I was 8 years old, we were at my grandma's. Now we went to visit my grandma. We were there almost every Sunday for dinner. Like I said, we were 20 minutes away. And we would also go there other times when the weather was great. We'd be there more than once a week. But what's important here is we always came in the back door, but for whatever reason, this one Sunday that I'm remembering, I was on the front porch, which was a little porch. The back porch was the width of the house, but the front porch was like a stoop with half walls around it and a roof and steps off to the side. Her front door, they lived at an intersection on the neighborhood intersection, corners, and directly across from the front door was a new Catholic church. And for whatever reason, I was standing on the front porch with grandma, and the doors were opening from the church, and all the doors, side doors, front doors, and tons of people were coming out. And I was like, "Grandma, look at all these people. Look, you should sell all your baked goods here on the front stoop, on the front porch, and all these people will come over and buy things, your baked, your pasta, your pies, your cakes, your bread, your rolls. They will buy this, and you will have a successful baking business." Now, the extent of my business knowledge was my dad would take me to his office in Johnstown once a year for my glasses, for my eye checkup. And he was an insurance guy. He just had an office. He didn't have a business. I mean, he was whatever. And my friend Denise Gatto, when I was 8 here, she and I were in Girl Scouts together. And her dad was a fruit grocer. And he had a home office. And we often played office when I was at her house. So, my grandma could have a successful business based on everything I knew. But her baked goods were the key, and that was it. And I meant it. And she was just very quietly smiling. She didn't say anything. And I was like, "What? Like, why isn't she saying, like, that's a great idea?" And of course, again, many years later, I come to understand that probably everybody coming out of that church was doing the same thing, making their own bread, making their own pasta, making the food, doing the things. They weren't going to buy from my grandma from any particular reason, right? But also this idea of having a business that was for me too. And I never thought that that was for me, really, until I was like 50 years later. It finally dawns on me. Okay, fast forward here through my, now I'm an adult, and you can see it's March 22nd, 2019. So when my kids, so we have 3 children who are now adults, but when our youngest was in preschool, I was finally able to like lift my head up out of the diapers and look around and see what was going on in town. And I already kind of knew what was happening in the boys in their elementary school. And I was paying attention to the impact that standardized testing was having, and so how it was cutting into arts education, physical education. There was a big thing around public health for junk food. There was a junk food bill. There were all these things that were happening, and I was really interested in it because it was impacting my family. And also in the town, we have elected town meeting members for town meeting, and that's sort of our legislative body here in town. So I was a representative from the neighborhood. I ran for school committee, which is what we call locally elected school boards here in Massachusetts. So I was twice elected to 3-year terms, and I served as chair. And in 2014, the governor appointed me to the State Board of Education to set on policy. And I had also been president of the state PTA. Our school was a PTA school. I didn't know the difference between PTA, PTO. It didn't matter, but I just knew our PTA was all about building community and connecting on the issues of advocating in where all the places we need to do it before governmental bodies and people who made decisions. And I was into it. And so I did that for a lot. I was giving public testimony pretty much straight until 2019 for like, better part of almost 20 years. And then when my state senator died, all of a sudden I ran for his seat. It was a short seat, a short campaign season because it was a special election. It was like 3 months long. It wasn't the best probably for me to run in, but I was like, hey, it's 2017. Look who's president. I have every right to run. So I was actually getting calls from people saying, you're a spoiler, get out of the race. And these are people I thought who would ultimately be supporting me, but they didn't. And I came up short, didn't matter. I came up short. And a few months later, my state rep announced that he was not going to seek re-election. So this is actually a bunch of the endorsements that I got running for state rep. And state rep was a much bigger race. It was 10 months. It was hard fought. It was 5 people. And the point really here for me is to say that when the election was over, I also came up short. But the point is, no good work is ever wasted. And so it was onward from here. How was I had quit my job. I didn't really know. I actually thought I had every reason to get elected. I thought I should have been elected. And I took a long road trip to touch base with friends and family all across the country, at least as far west as Colorado. It was on the road for 6 weeks, just driving and visiting and hanging out and doing stuff and just trying to kind of get my bearings again. And when I got home, I was focused on attending to some of the needs in our house. So I was like the chief painter. This, as I was doing things, this lamp, which has a bigger lamp at the top of the stem here, but this shade, the shade on this part snapped, cracked. It was old plastic or whatever it was, and it just cracked, and it irritated me. And I was like, I'm, not getting a new one, damn it. And so I just pulled out some cloth that I had and I shaped it into a cone, and you can see the big glommy stitches here, and it held together, and I kind of shoved it up into the inside of that piece there, and it's sort of in there with the light bulb holding it in place. Lo and behold, several other lamps needed attention, as this one and so we still have these people. This is how my house looks today. So this lamp was a little too short, you can see, and I had some calligraphy. I had some rice paper, some calligraphy, landscape calligraphy from a class that I took, and I just tore off a long strip and taped it. You can see, or glued it. It's not exactly straight, but whatever, it's fine, because the light bulb was showing underneath. It was just too short, and it was glaring, and it really bothered me. And the same thing happened with this floor lamp, rice paper lamp. It fell over and it got caught on stuff, and it ripped, it shredded, and I snapped off the ribbing there that you can see, and tried to, let it go like that with folding up the paper and taping and gluing. And anyway, eventually I added the fringe at the bottom, which I think makes it look really adorable.
Marianne, was your mom, because I have so many questions. I had no idea. and I'm gonna keep them for later. But
Yeah.
was your mom the example of seeing something that could have been mended? Like I know she had her stash of fabric, but were there things around your house growing up that were that like that? Or how did
No,
where did
no,
okay, so where was it just in your nature then to see something and say, well, I know most because I feel like it goes against our nature to
yeah.
do what you're doing. Like,
So
whereas like most people, if something breaks or it rips or it's, oh
yeah.
man, we got to get a new
So
one.
so I'll just say that probably in my attempt to, be efficient here, I probably left out a big piece of that, which is a value statement, right? About like,
Yeah.
buying less, taking care of things that I have. And some of that came from the fact that Duncan, my husband, and I lived in a Zen martial art temple here in Boston. We all had outside jobs. There were like 16 people who lived in this temple. It was a former church, but we lived there and we worked outside and had real jobs. And then came back and sort of were efficient, took care of the temple, took care of the grounds, composting, taking care. And there was always some kind of major project underway to repair things or do things, but nothing like repairing lampshades, nothing like that. It was all sort of big stuff. But the concept of actually,
The idea was planned.
buying less, consuming less,
Yes.
buying better, that kind of stuff, that was already pretty deep within my sort of value system.
So it was in line with your value system,
Yeah.
but it was taught to you when
Yeah,
you
I guess I learned it over time, right? Yeah.
yeah.
So I learned but it wasn't like your clothes, that wasn't a thing that my mom ever did, except like if a button came off and we all learned to sew our buttons on, whether we were boys or girls, we had to sew on our own buttons. But and I wasn't into hand sewing. She took her cues from me. She taught me how to sew. I put in my first zipper when I was 7, but everything was machine stuff, and none of it was actual hand. She sort of avoided anything that had to be hand sewn. But
Yeah.
anyway, I kind of went around now, and I was experimenting. I was taking quotes that and little excerpts of
Oh,
things, and I just made up my own hand, and I was embroidering them on my skirts and things. I had a stash of buttons. I think I have a couple of these that I got, for like $1 at some flea market. And I wanted to use them up. I also, behind this, you can see there's a couple of baskets up there on the shelf. They're full of yarn, they're full of fabric. The drawers are full of fabric. And most of it is like leftovers that I've used. And most of the fabric is stuff that I inherited from my mom when she died. I had bought some, but I have most anyway. Somewhere here along this way, I decided that I was just going to use what I had for most of the things that I was going to make, whatever that was going to be, because I kind of had it in my head now after these failed campaigns that I was going to make stuff. And so I was playing and experimenting. And so I started making these dolls that I called Boro dolls, because that Boro is a Japanese term for like stitching and patching. It goes back to the 19th century, and it's just like you never got rid of any clothes because it cost money. So you just patch them, and it made them more valuable and also warmer in the northern climate of Japan. So Boro is a style of saving and mending and using, reusing. So I was making these dolls, and I had a stash. Like I kind of get onto a thing and I just go crazy. I make a ton. So, so here I am. You can't tell, but that's me in South Carolina in January of 2020. I had written to my mother-in-law, and who is in her 80s, lives alone. She's a badass. And I was like, can I come down and I had this idea. I had been saving a bunch of shirts for all the years that Duncan was working at the office. He would wear them out on the cuffs and the necks, but the rest of the shirt was in good shape. And our sons, we'd buy them shirts, they'd outgrow them. And I was like, yeah, I could give them to Goodwill, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make. I'll keep them. So I
Mhm.
must have like 75 shirts. And I said to Ethel, I said, can I come down and just stay with you and get these ideas, stitch them up and get them out of my head? She's like, sure, you can use my dining room as your studio. So I went down there. I brought with me a bunch of vintage silk scarves and fine cotton scarves that I had. I brought down some of the shirts of Duncan's, the pile that I had. I didn't bring all 75. I think I brought 30 with me. And then I bought some trim, and I started thinking about how I was going to make these things up finally. And so I was making up the shirts into these little toddler dresses.
Oh my
And
God.
this is like the back, so I had some of them had like ribbons down the back and this kind of trim down the back. I'd made little bloomers for some of the smaller ones, but you can see it's
So
trimmed in some of that
cute.
vintage silk fabric and stuff. And I was all excited. I thought they were adorable. And I was like super happy. So I made up, and it's got maybe it's a little dark black trim. I don't know. I just thought it looked good with the word, and it was it was blue. But I made these up, and this is her living room, and I just put them on,
Oh my
and I think I
God.
had so I made them all up. I had about 25, 30 little toddler dresses, but you can see some of the bias tapes that I had were commercial that I had in my stash, but the other ones that are not white or solid color are all, from these various scarves and things that I had. And so I was all excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to call it Fresh Cercle. It's all about all the E's in Fresh Cercle. The E's are for the environment, empathy, energy, and it's RE, fresh, RE, remake, reuse, recycle, and it's this global approach to like, okay, I'm aware. I know there's all this stuff happening in the, when you think about climate changes. And for me, I was understanding it on a spectrum, so that there was like wind, solar, and electrical energy kinds of things. There's plastics problems, including in the ocean, water and air. There's the whole thing about waste, which is everything that there's too much of. And then there's this other section over here around textiles that I was starting to become a little more aware of. And that's kind of where I wanted to plant my flag, kind of thing. And then I got back, and of course it was lockdown, it was COVID. And so everywhere you looked, it was like everybody was talking about, oh, the mask shortage and all this stuff. So I had 3 hospitals around me. I wrote to them. I said, do you need masks? They said, yes. And so I just started I personally made close to 1,000 masks and just gave most of them to these hospitals and things. But I also was selling them. I set up the Etsy, even though and I put the toddler dresses and stuff on the site. And then it was all about the mask, and everybody was interested in the mask, family, friends, then they could go there and they bought. And I was just, for a couple of months, that's all I was doing. So my whole idea of having like a business was kind of off the rails. And I knew I didn't want, so after making almost 1,000 of these things, I'm like, I don't want to make 1,000 toddler dresses. Okay, now what do? I don't know how to do a business. I don't know anything. So I signed up for Kathy Heller's class. I promised to be a C student, but this was also a lie. I jumped in with both feet like I always do. I already had a personal IG. I set up the business IG back in the spring of 2020. And then I, with Kathy, do all the things. So it was, the Facebook community, the free things going on Instagram all the time, the website that I had to set up, the things that I had to make available for purchase on Etsy, and also to digital download maybe, and all the ideas that were happening. And oh my God, a podcast. And so I was doing all the things. And
We all started a podcast
right?
after
We all
Kathy
did
Heller.
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, what the hell? Where am I? What am I doing? And I was like, okay, I have to stop. I have to get off social media. And it took me almost 8 months to get off, but I've been off for a long time. Nobody should be off if they have a business, right? You're like, no, you have to be there. People need to see you, and da da da.
Yeah, which
I
is a
couldn't.
whole another topic we
I
can go
couldn't
into.
do it. I just couldn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was in it too far. So I had to refocus on myself. I was already walking a lot, that I started with in South Carolina because the weather was better than up here in New England. But I decided that's it. I'm just focusing on me. I'm setting my mental health as a priority. I'm setting my personal needs as a priority. And besides, not everything that you love has to be monetized. Thank you. So
Yes.
I looked around. I have my little pile of needles, like a da-da-da, and I had a mending pile that I had to get to. And when was that going to happen, Mary Ann? And so I decided I would just get to my mending pile. So I started dish towels. Oh my God, the dish towels that were, who mends their dish towels? Honestly, people, don't you just kind of like, I think I'm done with this. Maybe I'll just give it to Goodwill, or maybe nobody will notice if I just throw it out. But I decided I was going to keep them, and I was going to mend them. And this is just a one little example. I've got a ton. Oh, I don't know why that's
Can
black.
you go back to that really quickly? I love how I have so many, I'm like making notes because there's certain things I want to come back to.
Yeah.
This is so fun. Everyone is so different. And you just seem to do what feels good to you. It's just whatever's fun. Like, I love this. I thought we were going to have this be, okay, here's a little bit about Marianne's story and how she got into this. And then now we're going to learn what I love. I have to just pause for a second. What I love about you so much and about everything that you're talking about is it's like exactly in line with what I want this community to be about, which is having fun and pouring back into ourselves, right? Before we pour into others. And you exemplify that in every part of your life. You follow the fun. And I just love that about you. I think that is so important and underrated, and we don't do it enough. And I love everything, what Fresh Cercle is. It's about the ease of things. You embody this. I mean, and I think that's such a lesson for all of us. I think that every single one of us at some point in our lives, and maybe like at some point this week even, can use that reminder to follow what's easy every once in a while. We don't have to just like kill ourselves basically to.
Well, that's the thing. Well, thank
Yeah.
you. That's extremely generous of you, Sarah. I mean, it's not like I, woke up one day and was like, oh, this is how I can live my life. I was just like living my life and kind of learning things along the way. And I'm still asking, how do I make this a viable business? Like, how am I? So I was doing all those things for free and I was burning out for stuff for free. And like, so how am I ever going to survive trying to make a legit thing happen that I really care about and have it make money? So I'm working my way back, y'all.
You know what
I'm
it
good.
is
I'm
though?
good.
What I think when we start facing burnout, I'm sorry we're getting on a tangent here, but I think when we start facing burnout, it's because we follow what we think we should be doing.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to feel inspired by the Kathy Hellers of the world and they think we should do because that worked for them, but it's so different for all of us, right? And I love what you said about, I feel like a common theme with your life is that, whether you were campaigning, like you were trying to get a certain role, like with PTA, I mean, going back to everything you just talked about, you have looked for like a way to fill a need. And that's it. You look for a way to fill a certain need. You how to solve a problem. And so for me, I look at what you do. It inspires me to change my mentality around a lot of things, especially with clothing. And these are very like tangible ways to practice this, but it's not seeing something as, oh, that's another task that I have to do. You see it as a need to fill, like a problem to solve.
Yeah.
And you light up when you talk about it, and I just think that what a great teacher you are in that way.
Oh gosh. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. That's really nice to hear.
Yeah. Well, and you light up about it too. And that's what makes it fun. It's not about the task or the work or this mending, this pile of I have to do this. It's, oh, how can I help this? How can I make this better? How can I fix this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. And so I found this quote from Louise Bourgeois. And like one of the things that you don't know about, again, the efficiency of the try to do the thing. I was always encouraged to try out do all of the arts. So drawing, creative writing, poetry, dance. I took piano, I played guitar, I was a singer, did all the things, the drama. I was encouraged to do all of it, and actually kind of grew up at the time when communities took great pride in all of these kinds of offerings that were for the public, either in the public school or in the public square. It was a thing that was very popular in communities to provide for the people in their communities to have these things to do and to thrive. It was part of the whole person, really, even though that's not really how they called it. But I kind of took it for granted. And so that's kind of where, when I saw how some of this was impacting my own kids who were not able to get the arts ed in school, the physical ed was being cut into in school. Instead of every day, it was like twice a week, or it was initially 1 day a week. Anyway, all these things. So I loved this quote from Louise Bourgeois, and it also made me feel like I had a lot more control, and I really wasn't making a lot of things with my hands at this point. This is, in the late, 2019, 18, 19, 20, 2021, until I kind of got back into that for myself. And that's when I started, paying more attention to some of that stuff and really focusing on that, and knowing that there was this waste problem and the textile component could help us if I knew how to talk about it better. And so the podcast was a real rabbit hole, which it wasn't the things that I really started out. Like, if you listen to the trailer, and I don't advise you to go listen to any of this, but it's out there, so I'm keeping it there, whatever. I had all these dreams about what the podcast was going to actually do, but of course, life, and I had to learn a ton of stuff, I felt. And so now I'm at the point where I feel like I've learned sufficient. I've learned a lot, and I need to start doing more that's focused on the things I've learned about. So, and it combines a lot of the things, the advocacy, and, when you talk, sometimes you get to the place in these leadership roles just by showing up, not even saying anything. You just show up and people assume that you want to know more, and most times you do. And so they ask you to do things because you're reliable for that reason alone, initially, to start with. So I kind of accidentally became a leader. It's just by showing up and not saying no for a long time, because I wanted to see what was on the other side of saying yes. I wanted to see where, what else was possible, what was at the other side of it. So
did you do that even if and when you felt like your body, like you wanted to say no? Or was it
I don't
mostly
think it was really a big option for me, gotta say.
okay?
I don't think it was something that was that much of a hard thing. So, after failing on those couple of big campaigns, as I said in my in my long blurb the other day on your Mighty Network, I was like, now what? I really was. I don't know now what. And I didn't think, it took me a long time to kind of figure out, well, I kind of do these things over here, and maybe this could be something. I'm not sure. So yeah, that's it.
I'm sorry. We might even have to do like a part 2 here, because
Yeah.
there's so much goodness in this. But I will say, jumping ahead a little bit, how the last few gatherings we've had, we've learned a new thing from Shannon, from Laura, and now from Marianne. And I, started following up with sort of like a habit builder for all of us, just 5 minutes a day. And I thought, well, this is going to be a cool opportunity to practice mending. And it could be, some sort of fabric or object, or let's talk about mending something in our lives and just spending a couple minutes a day, maybe journaling about it. Marianne, I think that this has become sort of it's already become this workshop around how to follow the fun. And I think that's going to be our theme going forward. I'll elaborate more on this, but just let's make it be about that. Just following the fun and what makes you feel good, and finding a way, if you can, to help serve someone, to help, solve a problem.
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks. Now, I think,
so keep going.
I know I've talked a ton, you guys. I'm sorry.
Awesome.
It's a lot. But here, I figured it out, Sarah. I turned my camera around, and now I am here. I'm in my sort of office studio space. I just wanted to show a couple things before we get going.
Let me spotlight this for everyone.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
there we go. Is that better for you guys?
Can you hear me okay still?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Because I'm keeping it down. I think it'll give me feedback if I don't. So you don't need, if you have embroidery hoops, they're always sometimes helpful. They can be helpful. I have different size needles, and that's a good thing. Cotton threads that I've dyed and stuff, and other things, some I bought. But anyway, assorted needles, assorted threads. Oh, I wanted to show you some of the things I did. Now, this is a pair of shorts that I mended this was wearing out. It's getting very worn out here. And I just made these tiny, like sesame seed size stitches on the thighs to kind of give it a little more support so it doesn't rip through. And then I got tired of doing that. And they were jeans, and I had already done a bunch down here to try and save the knee, but the knee went through and I cut them off and made them into shorts.
Oh
So,
my
so
gosh.
that's that. Here's a pair of jeans that I did patch up, and the pocket was wearing out here. They were all wearing out around, and I just patched up, guys. The thighs were wearing out, imperfect, but I just hand stitched. You don't have to be perfect. You just need to grab some needle and thread. And that's what I did here in the crotch. The pockets, they were wearing through, they were going to rip off, and I just patched over them with long stitches and then some short stitches too.
How does it feel to you, Marianne, when you
Yeah.
hold a piece of clothing that you have patched or that you've made your own? How does it feel afterwards? And compared to, I mean, I don't know the last time that you bought like a brand new pair of jeans, for example, from.
I haven't bought a brand new pair of jeans since those pair, and now they're way too big because I've lost a lot of weight in the last 2 years. But it feels great when you are able to kind of keep wearing something that you love. Now, I'll tell you, this jacket is, I think it was like a busboy's uniform at a Chinese restaurant kind of a thing, and I bought it in a thrift store in the 80s in New York, and I was like, oh my God, this is the best. So it's like wearing out everywhere. I don't want to get rid of it. I love it too much. So I started hand stitching around the sleeves, which were beyond frayed. You wouldn't believe it, but I just covered it up. That's that.
So do you just cut strips of fabric and sort of layer
These
that
were,
on top?
yeah, that was fabric that I made the bias tapes from, some of that cloth that I had when I was in South Carolina. And I was like, I have a ton of it, you guys. I have to use it up. So that's where it's going. This woolen blanket came out of Duncan's house. They had all their family trips, and it's really in bad shape. It looks like the mice have gotten into it. It's all kinds of holes, but it's super lovely. It's this amazing wool. It's incredible. And I just started mending it. I just started patching up the holes, and I'm just going to keep at it. And if I don't like something, I'll cover it up with a real patch or something eventually.
This is so cool. Are they like little tiny knots? Are they individual, or is everything connected when you do that?
Yeah, you mean the stitching is it's a connected stitch with a long thread, and I just go around in a circle and work my way in on this particular kind. This is more of like what they call a basket weave, but it's also some of that sesame seed stitching to try and hold some stuff together and also keep it from fraying too much. So that's that one. Now, rabbit holes, I got into bundle dyeing and flower dyeing and all like that during the pandemic. And some of my free classes that I did, my challenges, I didn't like the results that came out, but I kept everything. And so this is one of those, cardigan type fast fashion sweaters that a lot of us probably have. And I got tired of the long version, so I cut it off, and I used this t-shirt and I cut it into just strips. I didn't make it into the overcomplicated bias tape like that other stuff. This is just like 1.5 inches of cotton knit like t-shirt. Oh, yeah. And I stitched it on by hand, so it has a kind of a stretchy stitch. Anyway, there's that. And then a little darn that I thought we would do today, which is like this little star darn where I put a pin in my sweater here and it ripped the threads. I wasn't paying attention to it. The sweatshirt that had a crew neck, which I always hated, and I was like, I'm cutting it off. So I cut off the crew neck and just made it into a wider neck and stitched the edge of it so it wouldn't flop apart on me. Same thing. Here's another one of those sweatery things that I was wearing out on the elbows. So I made these little patches to put on there. And it's so exciting. I also have a pair of socks out of the same yarn. So I'm very excited, very cool, matchy with my.
Those were socks?
No, I have a pair of socks made with the same yarn here. Yeah. So that's that. Yes, I actually took a tablecloth from my mother-in-law and made it into a dress, y'all.
Are you kidding me?
No, that's it. And then
May had a question in the chat.
Oh, good. Tell me.
You're dyeing your own thread.
Yeah. I dyed my own thread. I did that. I have some. So this is some store-bought threads that I use, but these I eventually. So this I did with marigolds that I grew. This was one of the first threads, just cotton threads. I bought a big skein of cotton thread.
What's a skein?
It's a skein. It's like a wound up it's a wound thing on a cone. It's how it's a
Okay.
continuous thread. It's a
I
continuous
didn't know
thread.
it
It
was called
goes on.
that.
This must go on for like 1,500 feet or something. And why I bought all the white, I don't know. But anyway, I was like, I'll never use that. Anyway, I clothespinned. This is made with turmeric, so it's a little brighter yellow. But this these colors. This is from madder, which is a root. This is some of the first stuff that I did. I just threw rocks and leaves and sticks into a pan and boiled them. I didn't do anything, and then just dropped this thread in there. But
Did someone do that for you before? Or did you just
no,
think, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put these things
no,
in a pan and boil it and see what happens.
no, I just wanted to do it. And then later, as I was doing my podcast, I learned from all these people who were like super skilled. And I was like, what? Oh, here's another thing. So I did learn. So the first thing was I just threw them in a pan. The next thing was I learned to like mordant, put chemical minerals together so that the color would stick. And then, so now here's a cool thing that I'm doing is, where's my, okay, well, anyway, I had a chunk here of beeswax, but what I like to do is this cosmic unity here with the mending of the animal, plant, and mineral. The animal part is any silk or wool that I'm using. The mineral is the mordant and the salts that I use to get the colors to stick. And the plant part is all the fabric stuff that's made with the botanical dyes and the flowers and the plants. So I love that whole
post with these things. By the way, we're going to need to have like a resource thread added in our
yes.
I have
Yeah, sure.
to
Ask
say
me
it,
questions
like,
and I'll
yeah, I just think it's it's so cool. So I've been lucky to get cards from you. The one that you sent last was, you did a little stitch over a map on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I have
Yeah.
to say that receiving something like that, like to know that everything you've just shown us, everything is the only one of its kind in the entire world. Like how
Yeah.
cool is that? And to get that, to know that someone, yes, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like the cutest thing. And like, so I have to say, like, to receive that from you, like to know that you put any sort of effort, maybe even to like dyeing the thread that you use. I don't know.
Yeah.
But even if you didn't, like it was such a standout card. I've never received a card like that before. And so I don't know. I just
Again,
sort of want us to just challenge us all to, yeah, put your Marianne twist on it. Like, what can we do to make our next card or our next gift, our next item of clothing, our next dish towel? Like, what can we do to make it our own and the only one of its kind? Because what a sense of pride, that hopefully you would feel in doing these things, knowing that they're the only ones. I just think it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, if I'm an inspiration, that's amazing. Because I'm inspired by all the time, all the things that you do. So what I wanted to do is just like over there is the top to what was the dress of
Oh yeah.
what my grandmother, my Italian grandmother, wore to my parents' wedding, guys. Somehow I inherited the thing. And now, why is this not moving? Here we go. So I separated. I'm like, I'm never going to wear that dress. So my niece is getting married in September and I cut it off and I have the skirt. I put in a little zipper over here, but then I discovered it had I don't know if mice got to it or something happened to it. So I had to mend the lace and I'm like, what? And, but I did. And you almost can't see it right now. It's going to need to be, I haven't washed it yet, but I will. But here you can see where I mended it with that kind of loose circular.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me get the other thing up so you can get a closer look. But that's all. It's nothing great. It's not great. But of course it's meaningful to me because it's the dress that my grandmother wore to their wedding. What, are you kidding me? And I'm going to wear it to my niece's wedding. Come on, that's too crazy.
And I mean, that right there, I see that. If I'm someone in your family, if I'm your niece, I look at that and I think, this person cared so much about this material thing that has now like gained more life, and it's going to be a piece that we get to keep in the family for however many more years. Like
Mhm.
what a thoughtful act. Can you, Marianne? Okay, because we only have, I mean, this is flown by.
Here we go.
Would you be able to show us what was it, the star style?
Yes, I'm
Can
gonna
we
do
just
it.
do that for fun? I mean,
Yes, we
I
can.
have zero experience
Yeah,
with.
and you don't need your you don't need to, you can watch, and you can watch the replay if you want to do it again.
Okay.
So let me just grab my
You said that you're in the middle of your family. Were you number
no,
4?
no, I'm at the top. I'm the eldest of 7.
That's
So
right.
just that she had only had 4 kids at the time. That's all.
Only.
So yeah, only. Now, you can use
Yeah, show us how this works.
yarn or thread. I'm using this cotton thread, and visible or invisible is up to you. Visible is just using a color and a style that people can see. When I
Okay.
was growing up, we would try to do invisible mending. So from the inside, we would pull the thing and stitch it up so that you couldn't tell anything
Yeah, that
happened.
was all the
Yeah,
rage, right? Like that's
that's
what you
like the
wanted. But
thing.
now I look at your stuff and I'm like, heck yeah, I want to see it.
So I don't knot my threads because, I don't. Sometimes I might, but in this kind of a repair, this is what I call a star mend. So I'll
Okay.
go in from the side and leave like maybe 2 inches. You can use less. It doesn't matter, y'all, because once you stitch it up, it won't come out. So I make like a cross initially.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I'm moving out of the view. So it's up and down and side to side. So I
Oh
just
yeah.
kind of go in, and then it's diagonal to diagonal.
I see.
So you kind of pull it together.
This is so relaxing to watch.
And that's the other thing, is that as I was doing the mending, it wasn't a pile of mending that I was drudging through. It was really relaxing and I was enjoying it. So that's why I kind of kept doing it.
Yeah.
And so with just a few stitches, guys, I don't know if you can see that very well, but there it is. And I can wear this. It's
Oh yeah.
fine. It's not going to come out. So that's it. Just
How do
like a
you knot
simple.
it? How do you finish it so that it's
So I pulled it through, but what I would do is go through on the back and go through I would use the eye end with the thread on it, and I would just go under all the stitches all at once,
oh,
you know, to kind of
hold
encourage
on,
it.
center it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, just try to keep it, um, and then just cut it off.
You don't knot, you have to.
No. And if it
Really?
comes apart and it doesn't look good, I just do it again or put a patch on it or something. It's not that big a deal to me.
You have
So,
like broken down this huge wall that I've had in front of, like a mental block that I've had, because I was like, I watched my mom growing up. She would make our Halloween costumes. I'm the
mhm.
youngest of 8. And so there's a lot of perks to being the youngest in a large family. And one of them being that everyone else has learned how to do things so you don't really have to.
Yeah, I get it.
So
Right.
I didn't learn how to sew. I was like, oh, my mom or someone else can do,
Mhm.
Anyway.
I have to tell you, this was a cashmere sweater I bought from a company I always liked, Garnet Hill. And after like the second wearing, it these holes appeared. And I'm like, what the heck? Now it didn't cost me $400, which is why I bought it. Uh, but I've already mended it 3 times.
And
And
that style,
it's
you just
getting
kind of go
it's
back and
getting
forth.
more holes. So I sent them a letter and I
Yeah.
was like, hey guys, and I'll put the letter in our group eventually, um, because everybody should do this from time to time, I think. And it's also their responsibility. But it turns out what they're doing is making taking advantage of the fact that people want cashmere. And so they are just like not getting the long silky fibers like they always do with the really high end $400 sweaters. They're just twisting together short ends, short ends, short ends. And that's why you end up with holes like that. So I was really pissed, and I sent off this note to them, and I was like, hey, I used to really love your things. Now I'm not so, it was,
Yeah.
it was a strongly worded letter. Maybe what I should do is put a template in the thing. But that's another big thing. Maybe you all have heard this around, and we can talk a little, we have a few minutes left, but just like there's expanding producer responsibility is like a new thing. EPR is like a new thing. You might be hearing about it in terms of, in the umbrella that is climate changes, you may be hearing it around plastics or around waste, and Patagonia does this. Their responsibility extends to you, the consumer, so that you can bring them back what you have purchased, and they will make the decision about, do we send this somewhere else to get used, or do we downcycle it to, carpet backing or housing insulation? What are we doing here? So they have a whole team to make those decisions. Whereas we as consumers, it's always been on us to solve the world's problems about, this thing, which is a producer's responsibility. So that's something that I feel really passionate about, to the point where I sent a long response in a survey to my congresswoman, and was like, if you're going to talk about climate change, we have to talk about fiber, and we have to talk about waste and all these things. And she had one of her staff people call me and say, now what now?
You know that it was a good letter when
it was
you back.
I wished I had been screen captured it or something. But yes, so there's that, and we can talk more about that. And also here in Massachusetts, we have Bay State Textiles, which is a textile recovery program financed by the state. So I want to kind of challenge you all for a little growth work, to kind of maybe go to your state.gov site, website, and look up maybe environmental protection as sort of the lead thing, and see if you can find what they have for textile recovery. If you can find it, I would love to know what exists in other states. When I did a 5-day challenge with some people who signed up, it was like 19 people signed up. That was awesome. A couple of people, my sister among them, was in Australia. Somebody else was in Canada. And then a bunch of states that, I had no clue what was up. And it was so fascinating to hear. So maybe we could share out sometime.
Yeah, I would love that. We'll have that in another thread.
We can do it in a chat. We can do it in the group thread or whatever. But
yeah, there's a lot of things that we can follow up with, and that we'll have to, because I can't believe it's been an hour. But I
talk so much. I'm sorry.
No, this is I love this. I love this. I don't know how all of you feel, but I just think that this is fascinating to me, and it's inspiring like crazy. And I don't know. I did want to ask you, just before we kind of open up to if you guys have any questions for her, but I did want you to speak to something that you said when you and I chatted, just the two of us, about today. You mentioned how mending for you has become it's sort of been this bridge between fixing things and also mending yourself in different ways.
Yeah,
okay,
a lot of I
want to hear
a lot of things, right? Because I said when I started mending, it wasn't a drudge exercise. It was really relaxing. And I think anything that you do with repetition has the same effect, which is why I started that little sampler book that I made with the letters and the different stitches in it. Was just a way for me to, on paper, use some of, so you don't even need you don't need fancy materials. That's the other thing. And it's the repetition. It's like breathing. If you focus on your breathing, it's super relaxing. If you're walking and breathing, it feels really good. So that's, and then I was thinking about not only to repair my clothes and the things around the house, but like, look at our democracy in tatters. Look at the relationships that I have kind of stumbled over and knotted up and made a problem out of. And so how can I actually untangle those things? And how can I make, like a very close friend of mine died in 2021, and it was super painful. And we were all trying to be supportive of her husband, who was also a close friend. And nothing can replace, but it was like mending the hole in the relationships from where she obviously left and was no longer there. And we were mending ourselves by over and under supporting each other with our arms outstretched and love and all the, all the things. It was just a big metaphor for me at the time that I was choosing to do more mending. And it just really became much more some of those challenging relationships that I've had, just deciding, not everything is really that important. I don't even have to repair the relationships that I'm not really that attached to anymore. Like, I don't have to do everything. And it was really about trying to come back to what's worth repairing. And also, after you don't have to repair everything if it's perfectly good, and you can certainly put it in a pile for goodwill or whatever. But when you're ready to move on, do you have some other textile recovery place that you can send these things to? Because our landfills are at capacity pretty much for everything. And the last thing, I'm just trying to take what I have, repair what I have. If I need to replace it, try to make it a little better, upcycle, a better level, buy better, whatever, repair better, do the things to make it last longer. And it just really brings me so much more satisfaction knowing that, okay, this shirt, these pants, these jeans, this sweater is going to last longer. And it's a story also, which I always thought I was a really, excuse me, shitty storyteller. I never felt like I told a good story, but stitching will open the way for a story. So
I think you're a storyteller. I love your story. Oh my God. I feel so lucky that I got to listen to everything that you said. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Does anyone else want to jump in? Do you guys have any thoughts for Mary Ann? Any questions? I know a couple of people had to hop off. May, Stephanie, Audra, I know you guys are still on here. Is there anything?
It's kind of related to that, but a little bit not. I'm just curious if anyone in the group has done the Amazon thing where you take their empty boxes and you fill them with stuff and they will send you the shipping, like they pay for the shipping and you send it to them and they donate it like within their reach to places that need it instead of like throwing it away or giving it to the thrift stores that then like don't exactly handle things responsibly.
Right. I have not.
I have not. I don't do that much from Amazon, but that's awesome to hear that they're doing that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's as great as it sounds.
Yeah,
it's a company I trust a ton. So I'm like, is it as wonderful as it sounds?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of ironic, right? It's sort of this catch-22 of like not wanting to put more dollars into the Amazon.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm sure they have the resources to distribute them to the right people that will do the right thing. Yeah, I've only heard of that. I was like, that's a really good idea.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I love what you said, Marianne, too, about Stephanie. I was thinking of you and your streak and how with walking, just doing something every day and how like Mary, it doesn't take much but the act of having that routine and just doing a little bit each day can have such a big and positive impact. I love that. I mean, that seems like such a universal thing, whether it's exercise or stitching or anything.
And it's like what I was saying before about saying yes. When you say yes to some things, you see where it takes you. It takes you to another door, you knock on it and, say yes, it opens and you get to see what's on the other side. And so it's just really fascinating for me to see like, like I heard about Stephanie's, you mentioned it in one of the sessions we did a few months ago. And it just sounded so amazing. And I just think that's so great because, anything that's intentional like that is going to take you somewhere that you didn't, I mean, it opens other paths of thought and things. Like there's another thing that I did.
Yeah, it's like it makes you look for what you're going to do next. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you find your way to more meditation or to more something after you sort of say yes to one thing. Something else happens and you're saying yes to something new. And I always want to be learning new things. I know it's, it sometimes is overwhelming, but that's like what I was sort of hoping for because I'm looking for a new thing to like, I want to be, if that it sounds a little flipped, but that is kind of what I was hoping for in a way. But then it gets a little too overwhelming and I have to figure out now, how do you do that? But anyway, that's like that's life, I guess, for me.
Yeah. Mary, we're at our 1 hour-ish mark. So we're going to have to, this is going to be an ongoing, topic and discussion in our group. So,
yeah, I can't wait to hear from
yeah.
everybody's when
Thank
they do
you
this.
for
It's
kicking
so
us
giving,
off.
so great.
This has been awesome.
My pleasure. I love
Okay.
it.
Thank you. We're gonna have, you and I will follow up and keep an eye
Yeah.
out for just a habit builder. Let me know if you guys have any preference of what you want it to be, because you've given me so many ideas, Marianne, for what this month's theme will be. So if any of you have a preference on an idea for that, because I can think of several.
Yeah, and I'll
know.
follow up in the group chat that we have here. And yeah, so if you really want to put stuff in there, definitely, and I'll say more and throw in some links. I also have a free playlist on Spotify. It's on my profile. If you go to my profile, it's Mary Ann. I think it's Mary Ann. It might say Mary Ann Stewart, and other names, but it's April. It's right on the profile. It's just for April. It's mostly instrumental or piano or acoustic or string orchestra, small chamber, classical stuff from the 20th century primarily, but there might be some 21st century stuff.
Oh, that would be
not
so
modern.
What
it's
a
not
soothing
dance.
experience that must be to listen to that sort of music while you're getting your stitching on. Oh, that just sounds
good. Thanks everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank
really
you all.
Great.
This was amazing. Thank you. Okay, we'll chat soon in the group.
Yes, sounds good.
Okay.
Take
all
care.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
Marianne, I just wanted to
say
thank you again. That was, you gave us so much in a short amount of time. That was
too much.